Well, John, I think one of the first things that I want to find out is, let's go back to the beginning because we're both, I'd say, in the advanced part of our careers. What sparked the game of golf, and how did that lead you to where you are today?
Okay. Well, first, Jeff, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks, appreciate the invite. But we I was born in California, grew up in the Bay Area. When we moved to Fresno, this is back in the '60s, um, and we belonged to a course there called Sunnyside.
Hmm.
And I remember the pro, his name at the time was Gary Lost a lot, great guy, and he had a great junior program. And uh, I just we lived right down the street from the club. We were members, and it was great. I could hop on my bike and go to the club and hit balls, participate in this junior program, and spend the day at the club. And the atmosphere was just awesome. I remember my dad got me a pair of I think they're Ben Hogan kind of faux leather golf shoes. At the
Mm.
time, I might have been 8 years old or something, and I put them on. And I remember walking on the concrete and the asphalt. And I'm like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." And, so, not that a pair of golf shoes got me totally interested in the game, but it was just a nice experience, and great way to spend the time outdoors. And I was around other people and kids, and we just had a great growing up, if you would. My dad then got transferred to Chicago,
Mm.
January 1, 1970, and I think I was about 12 at the time. And um, we moved to this super preppy area in the north of Chicago, Lake Forest. And I had no idea what we were getting to. And when I went to school, it was blue jeans, cowboy boots, and a button-down shirt. I walk in. I think I was in seventh grade at the time, and I walk in, and I wear my cowboy boots, blue jeans, and button-down shirt, and all the guys were in penny loafers, gray flannel slacks, and an Oxford shirt. I'm like, I am way out of place here. So, um, but moving on, we couldn't afford to join a club back there. So, the other opportunity then was caddying. And
Mm.
I got to work at a club called Andalusia. And Andalusia was the second oldest club in Chicago behind Chicago Golf Club. And the golf pro there at the time was a gentleman by the name of Hubby Habjan. And Hubby was a very well known, very well respected golf professional throughout the country. He was actually the National Club Pro of the Year in, I believe it was 1965.
Wow.
So, again, I think I was 12 that summer, and I think he had to be 13, but my mom vouched for me that I was 13. So, I got to caddy, and that lifestyle again, it was totally different, but I was exposed to the game then. And back then that was their tradition, right? Private club.
Mm.
Hubby was at that position, I think, for 44 years.
Wow.
He's a master club maker, but I really got interested in the game. And I think I caddied for about a year and a half, and then I worked the driving range. And then I got the opportunity to work in the club shop, like as I say, basically as an apprentice club maker.
Mm.
So, I was learning a trade um, that is totally, gone by the wayside at this point. We're dealing with, wood heads and irons. And, I was learning something that I really enjoyed. And I kind of, I watched Tubby and I watched the other golf pros and their lifestyle. And I was like, this is pretty nice. And I looked at, my dad. My dad was a great guy, very educated, but his work day was getting on the train at say 7 o'clock in the morning, going downtown Chicago, walking 6, 8 blocks, whatever, and then going up to his, high rise office space. And I'm like, this lifestyle is not going to be for me. I don't like this. So I kind of knew early on what I wanted to do. And so, I just pursued it and stayed with hubby. I was there for about, I think, 9 years or so. Asked hubby if I could turn professional, and he sponsored me, and that was kind of the start of my career. I think I worked one more year for him, and then he said, he basically said, John, you've been here a long time. It's time, you get some other experience. So that's when I went to work for a gentleman by the name of Reggie Starzik out at St. Charles Country Club.
Mm.
It was Reggie's first position, and I was his basically his first assistant, and it was another great learning opportunity for me. But that's where back in the Chicago days is where I really got the golf bug.
Well, I'm really curious, especially sharing for those younger professionals or just starting out thinking about getting in the golf business. I remember back in the day, I kind of had a similar situation where I remember, we were re-whipping golf clubs, we were bending shafts, we were doing all that kind of stuff. And like you said, that's really gone by the wayside. But what I really want to know is, how is it different today for someone to really be an apprentice versus getting into the golf business today? Take us back to then and like how that process worked, because apprenticeship, in my opinion, was totally different back then, wasn't it?
Oh, I think so. You were much more involved. Today's become a business, right? Very much a business, but a couple things haven't changed, and that's taking care of people, servicing the members, and so on. You're still running tournament operations, club operations, if you would, but kind of that traditional professional role, is probably few and far between, I would think. At this point. Technology has also taken over. Back at this would have been probably late 70s, graphite shafts, I think, were introduced at that time. So we're messing around with those, and metal heads were just kind of coming into form, if you would. So, I think technology is probably the biggest thing that's changed, but you still have customer service.
Here at Lux, if you can dream it, we can build it. Work with our designers and create one of your own custom Lux electric cars. All of our custom cars are made in the USA and manufactured right here in the desert. Every Lux car comes with a 5-year warranty, and we offer concierge maintenance service right at your home. Elevate your style. Visit our showroom today and start designing your very own custom Lux electric car. Lux, the name you know and trust in the Coachella Valley.
I remember back in the day when it seemed like we had to go to business school, and it was one of those things. Like you said, you stayed in that position for 9 years with hubby. During that time, were you, as you said, he was a master a craftsman when it comes to putting clubs together and building clubs. So you learned that trade, and then it actually went by the wayside. What was the transition then for you? Because obviously you must have a love for that as well.
Yeah. So what happened was, as you just don't play golf in Chicago. There were in the wintertime, there weren't simulators back then and so on, right? I think some guys had some video that they were doing, but it wasn't a big deal back then. So you were looking for a winter job. So the first winter I was able to leave Chicago, I actually went down to St. Thomas and worked for a gentleman there by the name of Bobby Pollitt at Mahogany Run. Little resort course on the other side of the island, north side of the island, if I remember right. St. Thomas was a great place for a 21-year-old, 2-year-old kids, right? But, it's one of those places, a great place to visit, but you don't want to live there.
Yeah.
Especially being from Chicago, I couldn't wait to get off that island. So I went back to St. Charles, worked that summer, and then the next winter I had the opportunity to come out here to Palm Springs, and that would have been 1981. And a gentleman by the name of Mike Clifford, who's been the director of golf at the Lakes recently, actually just retired, I think, after 39 years. Mike hired me at Monterey Country Club, and I was working for the Sunrise Company at the time.
Sure.
Developer, they developed, Rancho Las Palmas, Sunrise, Monterey, and then they, of course, moved on to bigger things. But moving out here really changed my perspective of the business. you're again going back to customer service. You're still taking care of the membership and so on, but in this aspect, I was getting to see a different side of the business, kind of the development side, building the club. So let's see. I came out here for that one winter, went back to St. Charles because I had a commitment to go back there. I completed that, and then I made the decision to move out here full time. And so I came back. That would have been probably the winter of '82, and ended up staying here, and here I am. So
you've been in the desert 40 plus years?
40, I guess 44 years now.
So there's been almost no change to the desert since you arrived.
None at all. Yeah, Jeff, I'm sorry. Are you here in the valley?
I am here in the desert. Sure.
Yeah. So back then, Monterey Country Club was a 4-way stop.
Oh, geez.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just the valley's just grown, in a good way, I think. But working for Sunrise, being at Monterey, is a kind of a small club at the time. The membership was awesome, great group of people, and then I was promoted to head pro in I want to say 1983. I think it was February of '83. And I held that position for 6 years. And then in 1989, they were busy working on some other projects, and they were moving some other people. Remember, I think I was told I was supposed to go into some management training program, and I got handed the keys one day and said, "Here you go, John." And I haven't looked back. I think the general manager role for me has been a good one. I kind of was getting a little bored, to be truthfully honest. I couldn't sit out there and, I admire the guys that give lessons all day. That's a hard job to do. But I was out there giving lessons, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I mean, I know I'm supposed to tell this lady she's improving, but she's not improving. I'm not going to keep telling her she's doing a great job. So, but I was also kind of the person, I was very inquisitive, and I was always observing kind of what was going on around me, and kind of took my eye away from golf, and I was looking at, say, the bigger picture, if you would, the food and beverage side of things, just how the club ran. And it's worked out really well for me.
So then you got exposure in all areas of the business, not just specifically the golf industry.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So again, that was 1989 when I was promoted to the general manager position at Monterey. And, I had great people underneath me, or working with me, if you would, on the food and beverage side. That's probably the biggest unknown, if you would, right? Mm-hmm. Not from that background. That's a kind of a scary business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of personality, a lot of different tastes, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And but I had good people that I was working with that really taught me, hey, John, we're looking at this. We're looking at this. You want to look at the plates. How's the service staff doing? Things like that. And my career just grew from there, if you would.
Is that it? Would you say, if you had to look back, and if you were your 20-year-old self and you were saying, hey, knowing what you know now, would you really advise that 20-year-old to, hey, do a lot of different things, learn the entire industry, learn everything, because it's going to make you a more well-rounded person? Or would you say, hey, specialize and do one thing?
I would learn all aspects. I wouldn't be afraid of it at all. I mean, I would embrace it. Don't turn down that opportunity. I would take that opportunity. I would recommend others do the same.
Do you think, John, in the golf industry as a whole, as you know it, I can't ask you to speak for everything, but as you know it, do you think that the opportunity for a person to come into the industry with that mindset, is that really there, or are clubs looking for specialized? Hey, we're hiring you to do this and this, or are they really open to saying, hey, let's grow these people and let's have them be well-rounded and be with us for a long time?
That's a good question, Jeff. I don't know. You get young individuals looking to get into the business, right? And I think when they initially get into business, they're not looking at, say, managing the club that they would, if you would. They're getting it. They want to play golf. They may want to teach, right?
Right.
So I don't think they're looking at it as, hey, I'm going to get into this business to be a general manager.
Mm,
I think they're looking to start on the golf side of things.
gotcha. When you so now bring us to today. You at a very fine club here in the Coachella Valley, probably one of the best in the Coachella Valley and certainly in the nation. It's called Andalusia. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Andalusia is a great club. How I ended up here. So back in 1999, I was working for another developer, the Drummond Company.
Mm,
I was a general manager there at Rancho La Quinta. Spent 22 years there. And the Drummond Company initially started the development here at Andalusia. We opened Andalusia in 2005. So Andalusia is a great community, kind of in the southeast part of the valley, south of Quinta, if you would. Great community, great membership, and that's the other thing. I've been everywhere I've been, whether it be Monterey, Indian Ridge, Rancho La Quinta. The memberships have all been super great people, and the membership here, they're a special group. As you can imagine, they're all very successful, but they're a very humble group of people and very generous. And they take great care of the staff. It's a pleasure to come to work every day.
well, now it's an 18-hole facility, correct?
Yeah, 18. Actually, we've got 20 holes. We're going to be, when we first developed or looked at the project, we were going to kind of be your typical desert community, 36 holes, 800, 900 homes. But with the downturn in the market in 07, 08, all those plans changed.
Mm.
So, and then Drum Company actually ended up selling the company to the Sunrise Company. So I've kind of come full circle and working back with Sunrise again. So
I'll be darned. I'll be darned. So now you've been in the golf industry then for how long?
well, let's say I turned professional in 78. I've been a PGA member since 1986. So a long time.
Yeah, almost 40 years. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Here at Lux, if you can dream it, we can build it. Work with our designers and create one of your own custom Lux electric cars. All of our custom cars are made in the USA and manufactured right here in the desert. Every Lux car comes with a 5-year warranty, and we offer concierge maintenance service right at your home. Elevate your style. Visit our showroom today and start designing your very own custom Lux electric car. Lux, the name you know and trust in the Coachella Valley.
It's something that I always, and I have to echo what you say. I've been fortunate in my career in the clubs that I've worked in and run that, I've had great memberships as well. And it's always important to surround yourself with good people. Tell me what kind of things you look for when you're looking to, say, bring in a head pro or assistants. What kind of things that you say, hey, these are the traits I'm looking for somebody to stand out and really to fit into our community.
Mm-hmm. Well, somebody like our head pro currently, Lindsay Winch. Lindsay started as an assistant with us. I believe Lindsay was at Rancho La Quinta with us, and then he was promoted here as an assistant, and then he was promoted to the head professional role. Lindsay enjoys the game, loves the game, likes people. You've got to be in this business, you got to be a people pleaser, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to really understand the service side of things and be there to take care of the membership. That's why we're here.
Absolutely.
That's why they're members here. They are here to be, they spend a lot of money in their home. They spend a lot of money on their membership, and they expect a certain level of service, and that's why we're here. As far as a certain trait, I think when I'm looking at somebody, I want to see somebody that wants to grow, is not afraid to take some risk and some added responsibility and to learn. I think one of the things that, helped me growing up, I was a very good listener. I wasn't a talker. I worked around a lot of older gentlemen, if you would, at the time. I couldn't get two words in edgewise. So I became a very good listener and I observed, I was watching what they were doing. And I think that's helped me throughout my career. I'm still a pretty good listener and I'm a really pretty good observer.
I think that's something I don't want to say in our generation. My mom or my dad would always remind me that we're two ears and one mouth, and use that in that accordance. Listen twice as much as you talk.
Yeah.
And growing up young like myself and you in the golf industry, you're right. You're around people that are very successful, and learning is. I always thought that was my greatest opportunity, is just to listen and be around these people to help me see things that I didn't even know existed. I thought that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they certainly have more experience than you do, right? Whether it be on the business side of things or life lesson side of things, I think we're probably all better off being better listeners than we are talkers.
Yeah. Well, John, a lot of times, and part of the show is the idea of say, hey, you have a lot of experience. You've been in this business a while. So I want to ask you a question. There are times where we come up against things that are challenging, that feels like a setback. Can you take us into one of those times in your life where it felt like a setback, but it actually turned out to be a lesson, and how you turn that into a positive?
Oh boy. You're going to face challenges all the time, right? If you're going to come to work and think you're going to have a rosy day every day, and there's not going to be any issues, that's a large pipe dream. That's not going to happen. I think you've got to, let's just say there's a challenge, and I can't think of a specific incident at this point, but I think you need to again go back to listening, evaluating. Don't make a rash decision. Let's evaluate this, and let's try to come to some resolve. I remember, this goes back in the early 80s. I remember a gentleman came into the golf shop at Monterey. I was the head pro at the time, and I had three assistants behind the counter with me, and Monterey is a busy place, and he came in and he just flew off the handle. I'm like, Bert, what's this about? And he wouldn't stop. And he finally left, went upstairs, was going up to the dining room. I said, you know what? We're not dealing with this. I said, I need to know what's going on. So I stopped way up the stairs. I said, Bert, you're not going to talk to me like that again in front of the staff. I can be your best friend here, but you need to tell me what's going on. And we end up being best friends.
I'll be darned.
Now, I wouldn't recommend that to everybody, but I had a rapport at the time. I've been there, a few years. So, but, again, I think you just got to listen, evaluate, and just don't make rash decisions.
Yeah, it's almost like that saying, and stop me if this is not interpreted properly, is like sometimes just like take a breath and count to 5 before you react.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also keep in mind there's also two sides of the story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in our business, is the member always right? To a certain extent, yes, right. And sometimes if they're wrong, you got to be able to communicate that with them and sit there. Hey, we got to do this a different way. This, first of all, you're not going back to staff issues. We're certainly not going to let members treat our staff in a poor manner, if you would. And we don't have that. I'm using that as an example.
Sure. So you mentioned earlier about technology and how that's changed. Give me an example of what you've seen, let's say in the last 10 years from a technology standpoint that seems to have changed, not the game because it is what it is, but we have, every golf cart now has some kind of laser equipment on there, and people are taking their iPads out there and they got music in the golf carts. Tell us what kind of things have changed from a technological standpoint that has made a positive change in the golf industry in your opinion.
Well, I think going back to golf clubs, and teaching, if you would,
Mm.
the technology there with TrackMan and so on, and video and simulators, and the ability, we didn't have that when we were growing up, right? I mean, we were basically looking at golf swings, and I was listening. Actually, I could, I mean, probably just like you could probably hear a golf ball when it was hit and know if it was going dead right or over in the fairway.
Sounds different off the hosel.
Right? Yeah, or a miss hit. But
Yeah.
I think technology, fitting clubs nowadays. I mean, it's just all those things have just been such great improvements for the golfing population, if you would. Right? I think it's made people. I think it's probably made the game more enjoyable. But I think those are all good improvements.
I remember one of my early my head pros, Jake Bechtel back in Texas. He explained to me one time. He said, you have to understand. And there was a gentleman that was wanting to take lessons, and I didn't really understand how important the game really was to a member at that point. I was young. And he said, you have to understand, he said, and you mentioned is they've invested a lot of money in their home. They've invested a lot of money to maybe move there and invest in the club. And for them to have a level of enjoyment for that investment is really important. And he said, Jeff, your job is to make sure it's as enjoyable as possible. How true do you think that is today? Or is it even more true?
Oh, it's probably, well, it's as equally true, if not more important, right? There's a lot of issues in this world, and I think people come here to enjoy their life, right? To relax, if you would. I mean, the business world, they're coming here from whatever they might be doing for a career. They're coming here to relax and enjoy themselves. And again, I think that's where we come in. That's we're here to make their life enjoyable.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would teach my professionals when I was a head pro is I'd say, if you're going to talk about things, don't bring up the bad things, because this is like the oasis in the desert. We want to get them out of the outside world just for a little while. That's what they're paying for. And that's what I try to explain to people. Don't say, hey, did you hear about this in X, Y, and Z in business? They don't want to hear about that. That's why they're here playing golf.
Yeah. It and these are things that you've got to learn on the job, right? You're not going to learn by reading this in a textbook. You've got to do it. You've got to observe others doing it, and it's just something you're not going to learn. And that's the other thing with me. My dad was a very educated guy. Cornell, Harvard Business School.
Wow.
But I have not learned by picking up a book. I'm going to learn by doing it, if you would, just like whipping a golf club or staining a wood head. I didn't read that in a book. I made a lot of mistakes, got my fanny chewed out a lot, but I learned how to do it right. But it's just from doing it. So
yeah. John, a lot of people that watch this show are people who are maybe considering becoming a member at a club like Andalusia. If you think about your club, what would be some message you want to share with those people who might say, I'm thinking about joining a club out here and I haven't made a decision? What would you say is a standout? What makes Andalusia unique? And they say, hey, let's give it a shot.
Yeah. So I basically take care of all the membership sales. So, all tour prospective members, through the club. And one of the largest things I touch on is, again, going back to the membership, how humble they are, but they welcome new people here. I can't tell you how many relationships have been built here. And we've got people from, basically all over the country. Of course, it's concentrated on the West Coast, Orange County, LA, some San Diego, Portland, Seattle, Midwest. But it doesn't matter where you're from. This membership really is engaging and welcoming to new members. That's without question, that is one of the great attributes of the club, really.
I think that's really strong. Well, John, first of all, I want to thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy. And the good news is, if you're watching this now, it's in June in the desert. And we tend to slow down a little bit. But, we've had some really spectacular weather. It's really nice outside today.
We've gotten a bonus. We've gotten this far. We can get through the next.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's been good. And I think we all know the heat's coming, but it's been really pretty nice.
So before we go, tell us how someone, if they wanted to know more about Andalusia or talk to you, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the best way to reach me, Jeff, is I'm not on social media. I don't do that. I just don't have time for it. And I'm better off not being on it. So, the club phone number is 760-777-1050. And people are always, they're welcome to shoot me an email as well. And the email address is real easy. It's all lowercase, letter J, Cummings, Cummings, at Andalusia, ANDALUSIACC.com.
Fantastic. Well, John, I really appreciate you being here. This has been wonderful getting to know you and hearing your story and how you got involved, back in San Francisco and then moved to Chicago and then finally out here in the desert. I really appreciate that. You're kind of a landmark, if you, not in a negative way, you're a positive landmark out there in the desert with as much as you've done. So thank you.
Well, I've been very fortunate, Jeff, and, I appreciate everybody that's given me an opportunity. I've had some great mentors and, like Hubby and Reggie Starzik, Warren Smith, Mr. Bone and Randall. And, I've been very thankful I'm very thankful, and I certainly understand and appreciate the opportunities that have been given to me.
Well, thank you, sir. I hope we'll see you out there on the links.
All right, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
All right.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.